The moment the lights go out, most people assume it's temporary. A routine outage, a minor inconvenience. But the first night of a true blackout, the kind caused by grid failure, cascading infrastructure collapse, or a large-scale systems fault, is not just darkness. It is the instant transformation of a modern civilization into an environment it was never designed to survive in. Elevators freeze between floors, water pressure begins to decay, communication networks stall, and within minutes, millions of people are pushed into a state of unprepared dependency. The danger is not the darkness itself. The danger is what the darkness reveals, how fragile every system you rely on actually is. From an engineering standpoint, modern electrical grids are tightly synchronized systems operating at precise frequencies. Even a slight imbalance between supply and demand can trigger automatic shutdowns designed to protect infrastructure. These shutdowns cascade. One station disconnects, shifting load to another, pushing it past safe limits, triggering further disconnections. What begins as a localized fault can rapidly evolve into a regional blackout within seconds. This is not speculation. It is a known vulnerability in interconnected grid design. The system prioritizes self-protection over continuous service, meaning when failure begins, it accelerates by design. The common misunderstanding is that backup systems will stabilize the situation. People believe hospitals, water systems, and emergency services will seamlessly transition to generators and continue functioning indefinitely. This assumption is dangerously incomplete. Backup generators depend on fuel logistics, maintenance cycles, and load prioritization. Most are not designed for long-duration operation under full demand. Fuel supply chains are optimized for efficiency, not resilience. In a widespread blackout, resupply becomes uncertain within hours. Even critical systems begin to degrade. What is rarely discussed is the hidden science of interdependency. Electricity powers water treatment. Water systems rely on pressure maintained by electrically driven pumps. Fuel distribution depends on electrically powered pipelines and digital transaction systems. Communication networks rely on data centers, which require continuous cooling and stable power. When electricity fails, these systems do not collapse simultaneously. They fail in sequence, each one weakening the next. This creates a compounding effect where small delays in response lead to exponential increases in risk. Evidence from past large-scale blackouts shows a consistent pattern. Within the first hour, emergency call volumes spike beyond capacity. Within 3 hours, traffic congestion intensifies as signals fail and people attempt to move simultaneously. Within 6 hours, water pressure begins to drop in elevated or high-demand areas. By the 12-hour mark, localized shortages of essential goods begin as stores close or lose transaction capability. These are not extreme scenarios. These are baseline responses observed under controlled analysis of previous events. The survival implication is clear. The first night is not about comfort. It is about stabilization. Your objective is not to solve the crisis, but to prevent your personal situation from degrading faster than the environment around you. The mistake most people make is reacting emotionally rather than strategically. They seek information, reassurance, or movement. But movement during early-stage collapse increases exposure to uncertainty. Information becomes unreliable as communication networks degrade. The correct response is controlled isolation, resource assessment, and environmental awareness. As darkness deepens, a secondary layer of risk emerges. Human behavior shifts under stress. Without lighting, visibility drops, increasing accidents. Without communication, rumors spread faster than verified information. Without routine, decision-making becomes erratic. This behavioral instability amplifies physical risk. The environment becomes unpredictable not because of external threats, but because of internal reactions within the population. This is the phase where small mistakes escalate into irreversible consequences. Transitioning into the deeper hours of the night, The focus must shift from understanding the blackout to adapting to its immediate effects. Temperature control becomes critical as HVAC systems fail. Refrigeration begins to warm, compromising food safety timelines. Electronic devices drain without recharge options. Each of these changes seems minor in isolation, but together they form a narrowing window of operational stability. The question is no longer whether systems will return quickly. The question is whether you can maintain control long enough for them to. As the first night progresses beyond the initial shock, the environment enters a phase that emergency planners refer to as silent degradation, where systems appear stable on the surface but are actively failing beneath it. The most immediate threat during this phase is not external chaos, but internal miscalculation. People tend to overestimate how long stored resources will remain usable and underestimate how quickly conditions can shift without active control systems. Refrigeration, for example, does not fail instantly. It declines gradually as thermal insulation slows the exchange of heat. However, each time the door is opened, the internal temperature rises sharply, accelerating bacterial growth. The hidden danger is that food appears normal while becoming unsafe, creating a delayed biological risk that often goes unnoticed until symptoms appear. The analytical reality of this phase is that every system you rely on transitions from automated to manual. Water, light, temperature, communication, and security are no longer managed externally. They become your responsibility. This shift requires a fundamental change in thinking. Modern environments are designed to eliminate the need for constant attention. In a blackout, attention becomes your primary survival tool. Every action must be deliberate, measured, and based on conserving energy, both physical and resource-based. The margin for error narrows with each passing hour. A widespread misunderstanding during this stage is the belief that water availability is guaranteed as long as taps still function. In reality, municipal water systems depend on electrically powered pumps to maintain pressure across distribution networks. Gravity-fed systems exist, but are limited and often insufficient for sustained urban demand. As power remains offline, pressure begins to drop unevenly. Higher elevations and distant endpoints lose access first, while lower areas may continue to receive water temporarily. This creates a false sense of security, leading individuals to delay storage until it is too late. Once pressure is lost, restoring it is not immediate, even after power returns, due to the need for system rebalancing and contamination checks. The hidden science governing water safety becomes critical here. When pressure in a distribution system drops below a certain threshold, the risk of backflow contamination increases. This occurs when external substances, soil, bacteria, or pollutants, are drawn into the pipes through microleaks due to pressure differentials. Water that appears clear can carry pathogens, making untreated consumption hazardous. Boiling remains one of the most reliable purification methods, but it requires fuel, which introduces another layer of resource dependency. Chemical treatments and filtration systems each have limitations based on particle size and organism type. Understanding these limitations is essential, as improper treatment provides a false sense of safety rather than actual protection. Evidence from infrastructure studies shows that water system failures during extended outages are among the most critical secondary impacts. In multiple documented cases, boil water advisories were issued only after contamination had already occurred, highlighting the delay between system failure and public notification. This delay is amplified during communication disruptions, meaning individuals must act preemptively rather than reactively. The absence of immediate warnings does not indicate safety. It indicates a lack of information. From a survival standpoint, the implication is that water must be secured and stabilized early before visible signs of failure emerge. The first night is the only window where access is relatively easy and uncontested. Waiting introduces competition, uncertainty, and increased risk. However, securing water is not just about quantity. It is about maintaining its integrity. Containers must be clean, sealed, and stored in conditions that minimize contamination. Improvised storage solutions often fail due to material breakdown or improper sealing, leading to gradual degradation of water quality. As the night deepens further, the electrical silence begins to affect communication infrastructure in more noticeable ways. Cellular networks, while equipped with backup power, are not designed for indefinite operation without grid support. Towers rely on batteries and generators that typically sustain limited durations under normal load conditions. In a widespread blackout, network congestion increases dramatically as individuals attempt to contact others simultaneously. This surge accelerates battery depletion and can cause network collapse even before power reserves are exhausted. The result is a progressive loss of connectivity, transitioning from slow performance to complete communication blackout. The common reaction to failing communication is repeated attempts to reconnect, which ironically worsens the situation by increasing network load. The misunderstanding lies in treating communication as a guaranteed service rather than a finite resource under stress. The hidden principle here is that communication systems operate on shared bandwidth and energy constraints. When demand exceeds capacity, failure is not gradual, it is abrupt. This creates a psychological shock as individuals suddenly lose access to information and coordination. Evidence from emergency response data indicates that once communication networks fail, the efficiency of coordinated action drops significantly. Individuals become isolated decision makers, relying on incomplete or outdated information. This isolation increases the likelihood of errors, duplication of effort, and unnecessary risk-taking. The absence of reliable communication transforms the environment from interconnected to fragmented, where each person or group operates independently without awareness of broader conditions. The survival implication is that communication must be simplified and prioritized before it becomes unreliable. Establishing clear, minimal contact plans with known individuals is more effective than attempting continuous updates. Reducing device usage preserves battery life, extending the window of potential communication. Alternative methods, such as radio-based systems, become relevant only if they are prepared and understood in advance. Without prior knowledge, these tools offer little immediate benefit. As midnight approaches, the psychological dimension of the blackout intensifies. Darkness, silence, and uncertainty create a cognitive load that affects decision-making. Human perception relies heavily on visual and auditory cues to assess safety. In their absence, the brain compensates by increasing alertness, often interpreting neutral stimuli as threats. This heightened state can lead to overreaction, poor judgment, and unnecessary exposure to risk. The environment has not become inherently more dangerous, but perception has shifted in a way that amplifies perceived threats. This is where the concept of controlled routine becomes critical. Establishing simple, repeatable actions, checking resources, maintaining light discipline, monitoring surroundings, anchors decision-making in structure rather than emotion. The hidden science behind this approach lies in cognitive stability. Structured behavior reduces mental fatigue and preserves the ability to think clearly under stress. Without it, the mind defaults to reactive patterns that prioritize immediate relief over long-term safety. The night is now entering its most critical phase, where initial preparation determines whether conditions stabilize or begin to deteriorate rapidly. Every system that has not yet